Hi, and welcome to another episode of the Burning Desire Show. And today I'm really privileged to have Laurence White alongside me, who we're going to be interviewing and talking to. I came across Laurence actually through my participation in the 2017 series of The Apprentice. Laurence, is it correct you were a house producer on that time? Is that the title they would use?
Yeah, I think I was assistant producer at the time. Yeah.
Yeah, so from what I remember, I'm sure he did lots of other things besides this, but one of the responsibilities Laurence had was to make sure that in our downtime, which there wasn't so much, but when we finished filming or before we filming, that everyone kind of is okay, that we're all like eating well, sleeping, and making sure the welfare, I suppose, of the people involved is kept, because it's really easy in TV, better than I do, of course, that kind of those things just slip, and everything becomes about getting it in the can, getting the production done, and the people involved kind of just fall by the wayside. But your role was to make sure that didn't happen. I know you did lots of stuff besides that, but that's the bit that I saw that I really appreciated.
Yeah, no, I mean, I'd say that's a fair assessment of things. Yeah.
And then since then, I mean, we'll come on to it, but you've started in the art business, and I'm just going to say myself, because I'm not blowing smoke up your arse in the slightest, but I've always looked at it and thought, there's not just talent here. It's like it's supreme talent. It's like it's beyond just like, oh, I'm a decent artist. It's really like it's another level. And I'll certainly leave the links in to your Instagram and your other social media where you're very active, I know, and people can see what you're doing, and it's super interesting. So without further ado, let's kind of get into it. I always like to try and understand how someone's got to where they've got to, not just where they are, and see if we can uncover something interesting that can be passed on to other people. So I noticed you went to Loughborough University, did an international business degree with a 2-1. What was the plan? Was it just, go to university, get a general degree, and work your way up in a company? What was the idea back then?
I don't think it was even that kind of thought through. I was the first one in my family to go to university, and I remember speaking to my mum actually on the house steps, just trying to work out whether it was going to be a good idea or not, because at the time I kind of got full marks in my art degree, so I didn't drop a mark, which I was kind of proud of at the time. But that meant that I didn't have to do, you usually have to do like a foundation year to then get into uni to do art. Whereas because of my grades, I didn't have to do that. And so I was kind of weighing up the option of whether to pursue this art thing or to do something a bit more generic. I really like business. I love business anyway. And so long story short, ended up going down the safe route, if you will. I went to Loughborough University, played obviously a lot of sport alongside my degree, and kind of gave up art from college, and I literally gave it up for 10 years before starting it up again. But the plan at uni was to literally just get a generic business degree and kind of figure out what I was going to do across that period of time.
So you said you were into your art from a young age. Was that just something, were your family into art? Do you just enjoy painting? Like what was it that kind of got you into it?
Yeah, I don't think it was that anyone was particularly into it in my family. I guess from high school, I kind of realised that other kids would maybe have like a picture up on the wall, whereas they were giving me kind of like a whole wall, which would span quite a lot of, the corridors at school and whatnot. And I kind of realised that wasn't necessarily normal as such. And so I understood that I was maybe better than average at art. And so as I was going through into college and stuff, I always paid close attention of how good other people are, to kind of be the best, basically, in my class and whatnot. And I realised that not many people, at least in my college, could do what I was doing or that kind of thing. So I was aware that I was kind of, I guess, above average, and then when I kind of got those marks, I guess that kind of is another signifier. But yeah.
It's interesting. In your art, you talk a lot about, and a lot of people that you paint are icons, people that are very successful in different fields. What is it about success? And you mentioned there, like being the best, you want to be the best in your class, you pay attention to who the best are. What is it about that like drives you? Is it the financial rewards? Is it just the kudos that yourself, you're really good at what you do, being the best of what you can do? What is it that drives you in?
I think it's being known for being the best at what you do, but I guess more overarching than that is actually meeting your potential. You know, take Cristiano Ronaldo, for example. He has literally squeezed every single ounce of his ability to be the best at what he does out of what he does. And so that sounds a bit kind of maybe cheesy, but it kind of is true with myself. It's like, even leading up to the art show that I've just had, like, I wanted to know that walking away from that show, I literally did everything I could to make it as good as possible. And with the art, it's a similar kind of mentality. It's like, I just want to know that I gave it my absolute best, and I truly believe that doing that will get me kind of quite far, because I'm willing to work so much on it, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, I get that. So just rewinding a bit. So after university, what happens next? You're looking for a job, I presume. You said you're not quite sure what you're doing. Where did you apply? What did you try and do?
Yeah, so this, I guess, is the part that you come in for, which is, I finished university. I wasn't working for, I think it was about 3 or 4 months, and I needed a job. I tried stockbroking. I absolutely hated it. Bashing phones all day, like Wolf of Wall Street style. I did not like it one bit. Left that and was just off work. And a family friend was the then producer on X Factor, and she was quite high up. And she was like, do you want to just come in for a weekend? We need a runner, which is where you're literally just making teas, cleaning up, that kind of thing, on X Factor at the time. And X Factor at the time was like in its heyday, which was like, Cheryl Cole, Simon Cowell, like those kind of years way back when. Anyway, I went in, kind of begrudgingly went in and did a weekend, and I absolutely loved it. Like the buzz of being around a live studio, the lights, the cameras, the action, the celebrity and all that, kind of walking down the corridor, and that kind of just I just loved it. And what happened was that the week after I'd done my weekend of work at X Factor, one of the runners basically did something that she shouldn't have with one of the contestants.
No.
She lost her job. And so that meant that there was just so happens that they needed someone to obviously do the rest of the run. And at the time, X Factor was on for like 10 weeks at a time. So I then come in for the last 8 weeks of the live shows. And then that led to Britain's Got Talent, which then led to X Factor. And for a couple of years, I was kind of going back and forwards those TV shows and entertainment shows.
And so you said you were loving that. I mean, obviously we met on The Apprentice. You did The Unaways Essex. You did, pretty much every show in the UK that's been big, you've somehow been a part of, right? Near enough, in entertainment space.
Yeah, I think TV is a very small circle of people. Like, there's obviously like a good few thousands of people in it, but you kind of after you've been doing it for a number of years, you'll definitely know someone probably on each production, as long as it's in the same kind of field of TV, entertainment, reality, that kind of thing. It's quite a small industry. And so, you're a freelancer, so you just go from show to show to show to show. And where I guess we met was on The Apprentice, which was one of those shows that I was working on at the time, like I said, when I was an assistant producer. And we met, and it was good to obviously meet yourself, still keeping in touch with a lot of people off that show. But yeah, TV's quite it's quite difficult in terms of to keep, because everyone wants to be in work and have a job. It's quite tough. So you've got to be good at networking and knowing the right people, as well as obviously being good at your job,
For sure. And so during this, how many years was this TV like part of your life? How many years are we talking?
9 years. Yeah, 8, 9 years. Yeah.
And so at any point in time during that, were you just kind of day by day, week by week, on to the next show? Or did you always at some point go, right, I want to return to art or into business or something else?
Yeah, so what was a bit of a jar for me, which I didn't realise in the beginning, is that where I kind of fell into TV and I was working back-to-back contracts on those shows that I mentioned, X Factor, Britain's Got Talent, I didn't realise that I was actually a freelance worker. So when that kind of run come to an end, and it was then time to kind of actually move up to the next level, I wasn't able to do it on that particular show because I think there was I can't remember exactly what happened, but it was time to move on anyway. And I realized that you're in freelance work. So every kind of 2, 3, 4 months or whatever, at the time, you would have to then find another job to then go and work on and sort of thing. So it was, sometimes you can make it work where one show will literally lead on to the back of the next show, which will lead on to the back of the next show. So you don't have much of a gap. But sometimes in TV, you'll find that there's a good few weeks will go past and you actually need to fill that gap with doing something. And so after many years of trying different things like social media company, jeans company, I like to be active, not taken away from the actual TV stuff. I just wanted to be busy outside of doing that and keep the mind occupied whilst in between contracts. And I was working on Big Brother and someone mentioned about, do you still do that painting thing that you that I see on your Instagram from way back in the day? And I was like, oh my God, no. And so I went home and I painted a portrait of Kanye West, which was great. And that went to a friend who had just been on Love Island, so he had a big following. He bought it, posted it, and then that kind of is what led to all the other good stuff that's happened going forward, if that makes sense.
Yeah, without a doubt. I think it's really interesting and impressive how you managed to parlay your previous career in TV and the influences and people that you know into what you do in the art space. And one of the things, of course, I've said before, you're supremely talented, but one of the things that you do best than I think almost anyone that I've ever seen is your use of social media is just phenomenal. Can you talk about what you do, the sort of how you're using it and how it's kind of working and growing your business?
Yeah, so I think that where I've had my TV life as well, that's really benefited me in terms of the influencers and the people that I've met along the way. Because in turn, them posting me and giving my work exposure has helped build the audience that I've managed to get to this point. Obviously, it kind of extends beyond just that, but that is kind of a large part of getting going as an artist at the time. In terms of social media, a lot of the reason I didn't initially go into art was because it was very difficult. This is kind of when Facebook was just beginning and all this kind of stuff, or just kind of hitting. And it was very difficult to see a path if you didn't want to go into the traditional gallery system, which at the time seemed very kind of stuffy to me. It was very difficult to see how you'd actually be able to make any sort of sustainable money to be able to afford, to do anything. Whereas when social media come along and I've seen a lot of the celebrities and influencers that I've met using it to promote themselves, I was like, I understand it. And so that in turn has meant that I've been able to reach enough people to be able to sell enough work, which, to obviously sustain myself and that kind of thing. So that's why I place so much emphasis on it, because until I go into a gallery, social media is the way that I'm able to sell my paintings. Do you know what I mean?
I think it's also interesting. So I presume you didn't, from what I understand, you didn't just go straight from TV and go, right, no TV, pure art. You you made a blend, and I guess you slowly wound down the TV and wound up the art to kind of, suit basically your living expenses. Is that correct?
Yeah, I mean, when in the beginning, I was selling paintings for a couple of £100, £500, that kind of stuff, which is a great additional money to a normal job. But to be able to afford the equivalent lifestyle or match the earnings that I was at the time, it was nowhere near that. So I couldn't move across. Do you know what I mean? You've got bills and whatnot. So yeah, it was a gradual process. And by having a job, it meant that I didn't have to be so kamikaze with increasing the price and could just slowly build that audience, because I obviously had a normal job alongside what I was doing.
How long was that period of time? The reason I ask this is because I think a lot of people in all different walks of life that are listening or watching this will maybe have an idea or a passion project, something in the background that they've been putting off, or they can't figure out how to kind of, make it pay, so they're working their current jobs, trying to figure out how do you kind of blend this together and make it work. So I think it's quite interesting to talk a bit more about that.
Yeah, sure. So for me, it was 2.5 years.
Wow. I think we all think it's like a fast thing, 2 months and I can turn it around and done. I think they don't realize it's a long slog, that.
Yeah, no, it's long. Even now, like I'll still go back and do like the odd TV, because TV's freelance, and it's great to still catch up with people and things like that. So, you know, I will definitely still go back and do the odd TV job. It just means that now I mainly paint. But yeah, there was it was for the best part of the year and a half, 2 years, I was giving away free paintings all the time to be able to give them to people that would then post them on their social media to build that traction. I understood fairly early on that was going to be the best path and the most efficient way to build an audience. So it was, yeah. At the time, you're just I was so hungry to kind of get to as many people as possible that doing a painting for free wasn't too much of an issue, you know.
I think that's also another great point that people don't realize. I was talking to somebody else yesterday, and they're trying to get into a different space from, they're currently a personal assistant, like there's virtual personal assistants, they're doing well, but they feel like their calling's more in like motivational speaking, that kind of thing. And I was giving the same advice, which is, look, if you're trying to parlay or move into that space, like don't stop what you're doing, do it half an hour on the side, do a podcast here and there, like get familiar with it, do the work for free, make sure you're happy doing it. And at some point, you know, it'll make it pay, or otherwise, or maybe it won't. And then you kind of know what you're doing, but don't just like drop everything and then, you know, try it. Because I think if this is one thing being hungry, but like if you're starving or like you're just like, people can sense that you're basically just, all you're doing is for money and just to make bills pay. Like there are some entrepreneurs that say, oh, you know, that's the best way of doing things. I've been there. I don't think it's particularly effective. I think your headspace, when all you're thinking about is just your next paycheck. I think you can rush work, you can pick the wrong work, choose the wrong people, and you have short-term interests over maybe a longer-term career.
Yeah, I mean, you literally hit the nail on the head. I think that coming from a place that you don't have to be so desperate for that sale or to do that thing means that the whole process and the experience for the customer is nicer, full stop. And then it also means that you don't jump at things that could be detrimental just for the sake of the bag. Do you know what I mean? For the sake of getting that sale in because you need it, you know?
100%. I looked at some numbers, which are really interesting on your social media. Correct if I'm wrong, but on TikTok, you pretty much 125,000 followers. Instagram, you're at 60,000. You have 1,000 plus on WhatsApp, which is a very interesting use of WhatsApp that I've never seen anyone do before. Where, you know, talk about that WhatsApp group. I think it's pretty interesting, actually.
So the idea was to kind of break through some of the noise of social media. I think that, and text is one of the ways to do that. What I was finding, you know, with platforms like Instagram and Facebook and whatnot, you're only reaching like 3% of your audience. Mm-hmm. And that's a problem when you're trying to get people to see what you're actually doing. And so annoyingly, WhatsApp is obviously still owned by the same company, but at the same time, so if they all go down, I'm still no better off. But if one of them was to go down, at least I can still reach, you know, a lot, you know, a lot of people and such. But what I'm doing, and the point of that is to help people or people that are really interested in my work to kind of see additional bits and pieces, which helps me resonate with what I'm trying to achieve and where I'm going. And it just builds that extra layer of kind of not authenticity, but kind of closeness with the artist. I mean, if I could get a text from one of my favorite artists every week, I would absolutely love it, and I definitely would do it. It does take a lot of work because it takes a lot of maintenance. A lot of people drop out, a lot of people, you know, the actual process of getting people onto your phone and blah, blah, blah. It's hassle, but at the same time, you get to speak to your audience and it's a lot of upkeep. But to give you an idea, 60% of my sales come from that WhatsApp group. So it is worth it in the end. I keep trying to tell people to do it. I think you're seeing things like, I don't know if you know Discord or what's the other one? It's called Telegram.
Telegram.
Yeah, where you can like basically create channels and whatnot. But the difference between that and sending a person a direct text message is a direct text feels like it's personal, you know? Whereas even if you're on a Discord or something like that, you're still one of many. So yes, it does take time, but that depth of relationship is what leads to that 60% of sales.
So does effectively you send a message out that you're showing brushstrokes or whatever you're showing, that message sent to 1,000 people, but it's sent as if just one-to-one. And when they reply back to you, they're replying back to you, not the 1,000 people. Is that how it works?
That's exactly it. So instead of being a WhatsApp group, you can send a WhatsApp broadcast. So a WhatsApp group is obviously me, you, and 10 other people in the group. Everyone sees what's in the group. I don't do that. I have a broadcast list. So at the minute, I think it's more like 1,500 people now that we're at. Wow. Plan is to kind of get to 2,000-3,000 by the end of the year. Is that when I'll put a message in a broadcast list. So as if you're messaging a group of people, that message then goes to everyone in that broadcast list as if it's a direct message to them. And so obviously I kind of try and keep it as personal as possible. But when and then the magic happens when they reply, I actually keep on top of the replies because, you know, it's all well and good just sending out like a marketing leaflet almost, or like, you know, your own press. But I think the magic happens when people are able to connect and actually talk to you, you know, oh, I was thinking about getting this, or, oh, I love what you're doing there. What's the thinking there? Or have you got a show coming? You know, building that depth there is like I said, where the magic happens.
That's very, very smart and great advice for anyone, I think, not just in the art world, but in any kind of walk of life. You've got some really interesting quotes took from your LinkedIn that I really, really love, and they resonate and they come through. You're so genuine and authentic in what you do that it just speaks volumes. That one of them is you say you're fascinated by what it takes to achieve success, and then within your work you talk about capturing the entrepreneurial spirit, hard work and persistence to achieve whatever you put your mind to. And yes, some just really, really interesting. And talking about your show, so we were originally scheduling this for a few weeks ago when your show was. Can you talk about the show, how it came about, what the result of it was, and what the purpose was?
Yeah, so what happened is that, again, through social media, South Place Hotel, every 3 months they rotate a new artist in their space to have artwork up on the wall. And so there's been some artists that I look up to that had been in the space, and I was like, well, this sounds great. It sounds like the next step, because I hadn't really thought about doing a show. It wasn't really something that was on my radar. But when they come to me and they're like, we're going to help you with press, and the space was just not like a bunch of white walls. It was actually like a cool, urban London vibe, like outside garden type thing. It was such a cool venue. I was like, well, it's difficult to turn that opportunity down. Originally, when I spoke to them, the plan was to actually have the show in June, which would have alleviated a lot of pressure on getting all the paintings done. But I wanted to kick off the year strong and just go for it. And so it was, I cannot tell you how stressed I've been for the past 3.5 months, but it's kind of all been worth it in the end, because the show literally went as good as I could have hoped it to have gone, you know?
What was a good show? Is that selling art? Is it the people knowing about your art? Is it a mixture of those things?
Yeah, so I mean, I guess most people's art shows are to sell the art. Weirdly, that was not the priority for me at all. The priority for me was to just gain as maximum exposure as possible. So the types of people that come, the fact that it was full, the fact that it's actually still going to be there for 3 months, people are going to continue to see my artwork in that space.
Where is that? Just so I can put a link, and I also want to try and visit myself.
Yeah, sure. It's South Place Hotel, which is like and that was another thing. It's 1 minute's walk from from Liverpool Street station, which was perfect because I live out in Essex and a lot of my friends are in London and whatnot. It was like a perfect location that kind of was in the middle of everything and easy to get to. That meant, yeah, it was just another a great selling point as to why I had it there.
That makes a lot of sense. And now you've also painted for, you mentioned you've given or sold works to some influencers, but you've also painted for some super interesting, successful people. The people that I'm aware of, will.i.am, Trent Alexander-Arnold, Umar Kamani of the Boohoo and Pretty Little Thing family, Philip Plain. How have these kind of collaborations come about?
Social media again, to be fair, like apart from the Will I Am one, that was a TV friend of mine showed him my work and he wanted it. So that was organised through that. But the rest of it just comes through social media. You know, when an influencer posts your work, then they've obviously got their network of people. You then put it on your own, you know, on your own profile and stuff. So yeah, that social media is the answer, the long and short of that. And what's quite exciting actually, and this is I guess a bit of the new scoop before it actually happens, is that well, there's a painting over there that I did of Rashford, Sancho, and Bukayo.
You show us quickly.
Saka, yeah, it's right over in the corner. I don't know if you can see it there.
Yeah, got it. No, lovely, beautiful.
Yeah, Bukayo Saka. So, that is going to hopefully, fingers crossed, Sancho this weekend.
Wow. Wow.
So we're going to be taking a trip up to Manchester to go and give it to Sancho. So yeah.
Wow. So he just saw it on social media. Someone showed it him, and he's like, "I want it," basically.
Yeah, I don't think anyone even showed him. I think he literally just it was doing when I originally posted it. I think it just did quite well on social media, and someone must have tagged him. I literally don't know how he saw it, but long story. He saw it and just messaged and he was like, cool, I want that. And I was like...
So you just got a message to your DM from Sancho? That's just how it happened?
Sorry?
You just got a message on Instagram, your DM from Sancho? Is that basically what happened?
Yeah, that's exactly what happened, yeah.
Wow, that's absolutely insane. Something else you do, which is also taking advantage of some new technology, is the NFT space. You also trying, which I love, you educating your fans and followers as to what that actually is. For people that don't know, what's an NFT? Why did you get involved? Like, how do people get involved? That kind of thing.
So an NFT is the ability to prove ownership of a digital asset. So before now, you could never sell a digital image to someone and then being able to prove it. But with the evolution of the blockchain, it means that if I was to sell a picture from myself to yourself, the process of minting means that you can see, think of like a big Excel spreadsheet. It would show that on the blockchain, it shows that Laurence owned this picture. He then transferred it to Charles. And Charles now owns that picture at this time and for this amount. That's a very basic definition of what it can do, but that is the kind of general premise. And that means that people can have provenance. So, owning things digitally, because you can now prove it, then becomes, interesting for a lot of people. And obviously a lot of people are making a lot of money from it.
And so why did you get involved and how did you get involved? Because it was pretty interesting what you did, or what you were doing, sorry.
Yeah, so I was on this app called Clubhouse. Because I think that Instagram is dying, I'm always on the lookout for the next social media platform, whatever that ends up being. I think ultimately we end up at a place where you get to decentralize social media, where everyone benefits from the financials of being on the network, i.e. you get paid for putting out content. But anyway, that's another story.
Different chat.
But I kept on hearing about this app called Clubhouse, and this was about a year or so ago. But it was invite only, and it took a while to get on there. But when I was on there, it was like an audio network. So imagine a bunch of like TED Talks going on all at the same time, and you can basically dip into different rooms which are about completely different topics. And obviously I gravitated to the art rooms and all that kind of stuff. And people were going crazy about this NFT thing. And for a very long time, I just kept ignoring it, because it was very difficult to get your head around and understand what an NFT was and why it was important, especially the way that the people were explaining it to me at the time. I just could not get it. And then I don't know what clicked, but someone just explained it to me and I was like, oh my God, yeah, I understand now. So for months and months after that, I then did my research, and for a lot of artists, it means that they're now able to earn a really good living from producing digital artworks that wasn't available before.
Yeah, and you did a project, was it the end of last year, with some of your more popular pieces, like, as I said, you mainly paint portraits of famous people, successful people, Adele, Kanye West, Drake, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah.
That sold out pretty much instantly, right? That piece of work.
Yeah, 4 days it sold out in, and I've just released my next series of artworks, which is the 9 powerful female icons that I did for my show. But full transparency, it hasn't done as well. And so where that was that kind of people were supporting me because I run one of the biggest art clubs on Clubhouse. People kind of getting behind the supporting. They've supported. Now it's about the art or kind of like what you're actually offering kind of beyond that. And it hasn't done well. So it's my job to now obviously prove that there is value in them. I think they're still underpriced for what they're being listed at. But it's been jarring my head as to getting my head around that whole space. So I don't claim to fully know it, but I just know that it's going to be a big deal going forward for influencers and personal brands and just in general, NFTs is going to be huge.
I'm curious, you talked a little bit about pricing, and you said at the beginning it was a few £100 and you just, or something you gave away. How has that evolved? We did in the pre-call a little bit discuss this, but I'm sure as an artist, that's one of the hardest things, because of course you are literally, it's the amount of time you put into a piece of work, and you only got one of you, unless you have some machine that you should be selling. So how do you kind of figure out pricing? How do you keep that kind of, obviously you want it to be going up for your own personal brand and of your own financial space status. How do you kind of figure that out? Is that just kind of a bit of a difficult one to kind of, you look in the marketplace, do you go, last one sold for this, maybe I can push it a bit further? How do you do that?
Yeah, it's very difficult. Like, I don't claim to know the right answer. I just know that where I've had more and more demand, it meant that I could increase the price because I physically couldn't service. You know, if I was to sell an original painting for £100 each, like, I just wouldn't be able to service the amount of demand that there would be for it. So obviously, just naturally, you increase your price to make sure that you're kind of, the balance of what you're saying there is that difficult balance of pricing it not too high, but also not too low, that you're still maximizing, you know, the max that you can get out of each painting. And so I'm at this point now where I feel like Instagram is amazing. Obviously, you get to a lot of people, but obviously you're talking to the masses. And the prices that I'm charging now are on the very, very cusp of probably what the middle class can necessarily afford. And so I'm in this weird space now where I'm like, do I take the leap and just jump and go from a premium product to a luxury product? Or do I actually just stay and just keep, steady with what I'm already doing? And so that's that weird kind of space that I'm in at the minute.
So take for example, I know it's different, but like the Sancho original behind you, what did that used to sell for, and what does that sell for now? Can you tell us what that roughly is? If someone was to say, I want to buy that painting, what's the amount they'd pay for that right now?
Yeah, sure. So, I mean, I'll just go off like last year. On average, a painting was going for about £3.5 grand, which for me was a really good price. Like, it was crazy that you could even sell artwork for that. I think where I've kind of upped the levels with the materials that I'm now using, the press that I've got, you know, going forward, works are going for anywhere between £4 and £5 grand. Wow. But the problem is that I'm finding that there's obviously less demand at that level because it's obviously a higher price point. But to get to the other side, you know, for an ultra high net worth person, £4 or £5 grand is not enough, because that's not the point or reason why they're probably buying it. It's to kind of show off, and it needs to be of a certain price. People almost see it should be. It's almost like, why is it priced so cheap? In their world, it's actually not expensive enough to even merit them buying. This is what I mean when you're kind of stuck in this chasm of like, well, you're not attracting those people because they don't deem it to be worthy enough because it's not expensive enough, but yet you're at the top end of the premium market.
I guess, and you do this, of course, and that's what artists do with prints. That's why prints exist, to kind of a diffusion of, you know, you have Ralph Lauren, you have Nike, who do the really expensive, like, you know, £300 you know, football cleats, football boots, whatever, or they'll have like the £30 version, look the same, but the materials aren't quite the same, etc. Is that something that you work with? So, for example, like that Sancho pictures, say it's 3.5, say it's £5 right now, it's market price as an original. What would that be as a print to someone to buy if they can buy that at all?
Yeah, so again, you're touching on something again, which I'm trying to figure out at the moment. I just released the latest series of female portraits, and when you're dealing with luxury, you want to make things limited and scarce. But this is what I mean when I'm saying that I'm not quite sure. Oh, sorry, I'm figuring it out at the moment, because you need to be convicted in what you're doing. Because if you're offering prints, which most of my prints are around £100, just under, anywhere up to kind of 200, just over, I offer 3 sizes. You're kind of hitting that lower end of a market as such, I would say. But if you're actually trying to service a luxury market, well, they're not buying prints to put on their wall at £100. You know, you're talking about £400+ minimum for a print. So yeah, it's this weird working out place. You're literally catching me on the day where I'm like actually frazzled with like what I'm going forward. I'm just trying to get a bit of clarity of what I'm going to do, which hasn't been the case before, because I don't feel like I've been at a level where that's been an issue. You know, you're servicing you know, the amazing people that follow me at the moment. But in my mind, I've always had taking things to the next level at the top of my priority list. And now feels like the time. But yeah, it's like, well, do you have the market to support that? And that therein becomes the confusion.
It's interesting. Again, I said this in the pre-call, we were talking about this topic, and I'm not sure who the quote's attributed to, so someone might know, but it's something, I'm paraphrasing, what got you to where you are now will not necessarily get you to where you're going, and often you've got to forget how you've got to where you are to kind of get to the next point. I think it's got to be taken into context. Of course, the challenge you have is that all the people that have supported you, that are buying the prints, that are buying the NFTs, etc., you don't want to alienate those people. At the same time, you want to progress in your career. So I'll leave you to ponder that one. I really look forward to seeing how it goes. I think the other opportunity that you have in your space is obviously getting to the galleries. Then you've got commissions you got to think about, and there's a whole lot of other, I know other artists, a whole lot of other things to think about at that point. I mean, it's been honestly super interesting, and you know, your work is phenomenal. Like I said to you in passing, I'd love to buy an original at some point. I'm not financially right there right now, so maybe a print's probably more realistic for me. But it's definitely on the agenda. Maybe if I'm successful enough, you'll paint me. I don't know. Who knows? So yeah, listen, I've really enjoyed the conversation. We've covered a good amount of interesting stuff. And yeah, I mean, I just wish you all the success. And I literally said this to people. I show people your art all the time. And people say to me, like, can't believe that it's actually art and not a picture. That's what people say. And then I show them, you know, what it's about. And I genuinely think that, and you will, because you've got the thing that you have, in my opinion, that most artists that come across don't, is you have the business brain and also the talent. The two things combined. And I think I once read Quora, the question answer website. Someone posted a question saying, you know, what does it take to become a billionaire? And the answer was actually given from Elon Musk's first wife. And the thing she basically said, amongst other things, was the ability to merge 2 or 3 different skills together and create something. So in your instance, it's not just having the talent of the artist, it's also having the business brain. You've also got the social media brain, the marketing brain, and all those things combined, I think, any connections, of course, and how to use all those things, that's led you to this point. And of course, I'm sure that's going to lead us to the next place. And if I was someone who has the money right now, like, I'd invest in your art, because I think it's only going in one direction, honestly.
Yeah, I mean, I'm supremely confident of that. I guess the hesitation is just having never done this before. It's obviously the unknown, which is which is what I'm trying to navigate at the moment. But I guess therein lies the journey, right?
Yeah, I had to do burning issues every week, and I talk about different topics. And one of the ones I talked about 2 or 3 weeks ago was life's an art, not a science. If there was a book that you could read that says, okay, Laurence, you're priced at this point, at this number follows do this, like, be boring. It'd be predictable, boring, and it'd be horrible. The fact that you have all these dilemmas and all these, you know, you're in a great position, of course. I know it's difficult and your brain's frazzled, but that's a great spot to be, rather than the spot where no one wants to buy your art and you haven't got a clue. So but every level you're going to have different kind of challenges and you got to meet them on it and figure it out for sure.
Yeah, and I think that for me, because I've been so flat out for the last 3 or 4 months getting ready for this show, it's kind of a bit weird to now not have so much on my plate. But it's also a good thing in just having a lot of time to now just kind of just take a step back and think about what it is that I actually want to do going forward. And I think going forward, one of the ideas I'm playing with is still speaking to this idea of being successful, but actually maybe painting things which are a bit more, I'm not just kind of portraits of people's faces. I'm, exploring expressions or just other things outside of just, the portrait. So I think that could be an evolution and something that I'm going to look to explore later on this year. As a way of kind of taking things to the next level as well,
One last thing I'm thinking of is like, when you're painting, are you thoroughly enjoying what you're doing, or have you got like a bit of a head of you going, is this going to sell, the business side of it, or when you're painting and you're passionate about it still? Is that never waning? Is that growing stronger as time goes on?
I really enjoy painting when there's not the pressure of having to sell the piece or get ready for something to do. For example, getting ready for my show, I could not have been more stressed. This is probably the most stressed out I've been in my life, just because it was so many paintings for me anyway that I had to do prior to the actual launch of the event, that I couldn't really focus on actually enjoying the painting, because it was obviously just so much. I've never had a show. I've never done it before. So I didn't know what to expect and what's needed at each stage to actually make it happen. And there's a lot, by the way, in terms of making that happen. So I wasn't really able to enjoy it. I think that going forward in the next few paintings, I definitely just want to do stuff that I want to do, and not have the pressure of a deadline or money or whatever,
Can you tell us what you're doing next, or is it still under wraps or secret? You just don't know?
I said I literally have nothing planned, which is amazing. First time in a long time that I actually don't have anything penned in, and I think I've kind of intentionally said no to a few bits and not really ready yet to kind of just jump in, because I don't want to just go straight into something, because I will literally just burn out, I think. And being aware of that in itself, I think, is actually going to benefit me long term.
Yeah.
Because I don't think it would be useful to do that.
So I guess my last question is on that point. You've got your camera's gone, but don't worry. But you've got are you still there, Laurence?
Yeah, I'm here, man.
Yeah. So you've not got a plan as to what the next thing. Where do you then find your inspiration from? How do you figure out? Say you're going down still the portraits of successful people. How do you decide who, in your view, is successful? Is it just subjective, whether you feel like, for whatever reason, are there certain metrics you go by? So take your next painting. Like, what's the process you'll go by? Will you just spend a week not doing anything and then something will come to you, or will you? How do you do it?
I mean, I've been lucky enough that, like we said, I mean, we've been saying, I've built an audience where my next painting will probably be a commission. And most of the paintings, I mean, the paintings I did for the show is the first bunch of paintings I've done in a very long time that weren't a commission.
Okay.
So it will be most probably a commission again, I would imagine, just whilst I figure out exactly where I want to take things going forward. Like I said, I do want to experiment with some different ideas, but I also I don't want to just sit down or just start painting, just like kamikaze, just run into it. It's like, no, like I said, I want to take a step back, just think about what subject, like what is the meaning, like, obviously it will feed into this overarching idea of like being elite and at the top and being successful, but actually what that then becomes is something that I'm just going to work out slowly, over the next X period of time.
I'm interested, actually. Do you like lean on any mentors in the art space or business space that you kind of ask for advice, or do you kind of just read books and podcasts and kind of just figure it out yourself? How do you go about kind of you've got this dilemma now? Like how will you go about trying to figure out the pricing or the next piece or where the art should go?
Yeah, I mean, I've been lucky enough, even being on Clubhouse, I've been able to connect with so many great people in the space to work out who is who and who I value their opinion. And a lot of art critics and actually people in the art world, which I wouldn't even necessarily claim myself to be at this point. I always call myself a social media artist, where there's people that are actually, working for museums and whatnot who are actually in the space, And so I'll probably go to those guys and start kind of picking their brains as to kind of not necessarily what to paint, but kind of maybe where things could kind of be taken with what I'm doing.
For sure. And that's a good place to leave it. And I really look forward to seeing where things go and getting my hands on I think a print for now, and then probably when it's 50 grand, and when 50 grand is not a lot to me, I'll probably buy 50 grand, whatever it is at that point. Thanks so much for your time, Laurence. It's been so interesting.
No, man, thanks so much for having me on. It's been great to catch up.